merciful God, I really can't help but see God's hand in the life of His chosen people. And what's great, as I study and understand the Bible, I realize clearly that the people that God uses are ordinary people. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, not only ordinary, but they're as fallen as we are. They're not special. They're not really great. In fact, as I mentioned, the book of the chapter 37 to 50 is not about Joseph. It's about Jacob and Judah. Yet when we look at the life, Genesis chapter 37 to 50, it seems to be all about Joseph. How he was sold into slavery and eventually ended up in the house of Potiphar, how he resisted a sexual attack by the wife, how he was put into jail and eventually was vindicated and became the right hand of the Pharaoh, called his family back. It seems to be all about Joseph, but the reality is Joseph was not the promised seed. It was Judah. So in chapter 37, we left there when Joseph was eventually sold into slavery. The brothers wanted to kill Joseph. They were jealous because he was the favorite. He was shepherding the sheep with his brother, and one day he told on his brother to his father. The father eventually gave Joseph a coat, multicolored coat, a coat of royalty. And told him, okay, don't anymore shepherd the sheep. Let your brother do that. And when Joseph had to check on the brother plotted to kill him. Eventually, he was sold into slavery in Egypt. The good thing here is Joseph is not the promised seed. He's out of Egypt, he's out of the promised land and into Egypt. Being Egypt is never nice. It depicts worldliness. It depicts all the bad things about mankind. Now we enter chapter 38. Abruptly, the focus moves out of Jacob and now enters Judah. Now, as we well know, the childhood of Judah wasn't that great. He was the fourth child of Leah. The wife that was forced into Jacob, the unwanted wife. And clearly, can you imagine in the earlier chapter when Jacob wanted to go back to the promised land and heard that Esau was waiting there with 400 men, Jacob now puts Judah and Leah and all the other siblings in front, and Joseph and Rachel at the back, so that if Esau was to attack them, the first people to die was Judah, the mom, and the brothers, and Joseph and Rachel could be able to escape. Imagine, what would you feel if you're in that family? What would you feel that your brothers are murderers? Right? That your other brother raped your sister. not a great family. It was a dysfunctional family. And we see, now that Joseph is in Egypt, how's the life of Judah? The guy that is the part of the promised seed. Wherein eventually David will be born and eventually Jesus Christ will be born. We pick it up in verse 1. Genesis 38 verse 1. It says, and it came about at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. And unlike Joseph, who was forced out of the promised land by being sold to slavery, in Judah's case, he did it voluntarily. In fact, he departed on his own. He did not anymore want to be part of the family of Jacob. He left the promised land in Hebron and ended up in Canaan. That's literally a physical descent from the mountaintops to the plains. And that journey, physically, would reflect his journey spiritually. He left the promised land and entered into the lowlands of Canaan, a reflection of his physical, spiritual condition. Without being forced. He said, enough is enough. I don't want to be part of this family. I'm leaving. Verse 2. Judah now in Canaan saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in to her. Once arriving at Canaan, Judah took a wife. He saw a wife, a girl, and took her. You know, that wording is very brazen. It's the same wording used with Eve. Eve saw the fruit and took it. The sons of God saw the daughters of man, and they took them. Pharaoh saw Sarah. Shechem took Dinah. It seems forceful. It's suggestive of a lustful desire and forcefully getting something. Judah did not romance the girl. She just saw him and just took him. Verse 3. So that girl eventually conceived and bore a son and named them Of all names, she was named He was named The word in Hebrew is, if spelled backwards, means evil. You remember that ad? I love milk and I love Clem. Do you remember that ad? Clem? Clem is milk spelled backwards, right? It's like calling your child Odimon. Meaning what? Reverse of demonyo. Why would you want to name your kid like that? Right? Verse 4. Then she conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. Verse 5. And she bore still another son and named him Shelah. And it was at Chezib that she bore him. You know, God explicitly told Abraham and his family never to marry into the Canaanites. Why? Because they're pagans. They worship a different God. Yet here, Judah did not care. This chosen seed of God did not care. He did not care about his father. He did not care about his family. He left the family, left the promised land, went to a land that wherein he was not supposed to be, took a wife forcefully, named their child evil, spelled in a reverse manner, and bore not only one, not only two, but 3 sons. Meaning what? He was there for a long time. He was not there on a short trip. He went there and stayed there and brought up a family in that area. He has turned away from his family. Rebellious child. I repeat, he is the promised seed. Not Joseph. Verse 6, now Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Okay, the kid starts growing up. You can imagine how long this is already. His eldest son named was about to get married at the marrying age, so he decided to get a wife named Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. True enough, his name was evil, spelled reverse, and God said, you are so evil, I'm gonna take your life. You know, during that time, a girl is married off right up after puberty, which is about 14 years old. 14, 15, 16. So Tamar, the wife of is now a widow at a very young age. That's hard. Verse 8. When Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brothers. Okay. Your brother just died. The law, the Levirate law, requires the second brother to marry the wife of the first. If the wife of the first, his elder brother, does not have kids, so the kuya doesn't have a kid, the second in line should marry. And the purpose of that is because the elder brother is supposed to carry the blessing. Now, to promulgate his memory and to preserve the blessing to his family, the second brother has to marry the wife in order that a kid will be born from the wife of the first brother. And if the kid is born, that will be the son of the first brother, not the second brother. That's how the law is structured. It is to perpetuate the memory of the eldest brother and to protect from poverty the widow. So the second brother marries the widow. What happened? Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. Even though he's the physical father, Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. Therefore, what? The blessings will not go to him. It will now go to the son, his son. But it's not considered his son. It will now go to the son of his brother who is dead. So, when he went into his brother's wife, he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. I mean, he did not impregnate. He went to bed with her, but did not intentionally impregnate her because she knew that if the wife does not bear a child, eventually that blessing will be his. And he will have now this privilege of being the firstborn, of having double inheritance, of having the blessings of God bestowed on him. And he was willing to let go the memory of his brother. And the sad thing here is that he was going to bed knowing intentionally that he will not fulfill his obligation. And the wording here is that he was going to bed with Tamar very often. In other versions, you see the word whenever. Which means what? He was going to her over and over again for his personal pleasure, not anymore for the purpose of giving a child to Tamar. So, Onan abused Tamar sexually. Verse 10. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord. So he took his life also. The Lord found it evil that Onan would do such a thing. You know, never in the Bible was people put to death. The first one was never before this. The last time, meaning Noah's flood. But this was the first time God specifically put specific people to death. In the time of Noah, everybody was killed. But here, God said, and Onan, you will be put to death. The irony here is Judah deceived his father that his son, Joseph, was dead. Now the Lord in turn puts two of his sons literally dead. Verse 11. If you were Judah, what would you say? My first son, I chose Tamar, my first son died. I gave you my second son, he died too. The problem is not my son. The problem is Tamar. Tamar is cursed. Now, Judah is now obliged to give his third son. I remember, I think I shared to you, the friend of my mom, right? Married, thrice? First husband died. Second husband died. I met the third husband and I said, good luck. He died too. Good luck. Well, now, is she married again? Okay, stop na. Tell her stop na. Right? 3. Wow. And I saw the girl. She's not that great. But I think she's rich. That's why. Then Judah said to her daughter-in-law, hey, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Sheila grows up. Judah finds an excuse. Why not to give Sheila? He's still young. Wait a while. But deep inside, for he thought, I'm afraid that he too may die like his brothers. So Tamar went and lived in his father's house. Judah doesn't want to give anymore his third son, thinking that it was Tamar that has the curse, that had the problem. Now, that's fine. The thing is, Judah, should take care of Tamar. But instead, he ships her out. And told her, when my youngest son grows, okay, I will marry him to you. So, privately, she was shamed by the sexual abuse of Onan. Publicly, she was shamed with a growing perception that probably you're the defect. Probably indeed there's a curse. And if Judah does not fulfill his promise in giving the youngest son to Tamar, Tamar will be the lowest in society. She will be an outcast. Ironically, her name means palm tree, a thing of beauty. Now she's perceived as damaged good, needs to be shipped out of our sight. Tamar was still childless. Judah had one more son but was not willing to give him. Doesn't want to take the risk. Verse 12. Now, after a considerable time went by. Things were looking normal. Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of mourning ended, Judah went to sheep shearing at Timnah. He and his friend Ira, the Adullamite. It was told to Tamar, behold, her father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear the sheep. After a considerable time, Tamar was still waiting in his father's house. Judah's life was going on. The wife died. Eventually, it was time of shearing. You know when you say sheep shearing time, that's a time to party. It's like spring break in America, when people will go out to Florida and drink and have sex all around. Judah was about to go sheep shearing. It's a time of celebration. He wanted to go on a business trip, which is equivalent to a spring break in America. I remember before I used to go to Vegas very often with my wife. In the streets, diba? That's why it's called Sin City. In the streets, they're peddling prostitutes with photos. I remember with you too. So I can't believe they're offering us this with our kids around. Remember? Walking. It's like that. It's going to Las Vegas. Sheep shearing time. But, it seems Tamar knew something about his father-in-law, Judah. She believes that Judah presented the opportunity to sleep with a prostitute will bite into it. The law says, remember I said, if the eldest son dies, the second must marry. If the second son dies, the third must marry. Eventually, if all the son dies, the father should marry. That is the law. So, Tamar hatches a plan. If you don't want to give me your son, fine, I'll catch you. I remember this story, right? A young kid, rich young kid, had a crush on this girl and went to the girl, and the girl doesn't want to marry him. The girl's a model and, the it girl, and said to the guy, the son said to the girl, hey, by the way, marry me. My dad's about to die, he's in the ICU. The girl, wise enough, marries the father. She gets an inheritance. Wow. Verse 14. She has a plan. So she removed her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil and wrapped herself and sat at the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Tinma. For she saw that Shelah has grown up and she has not given and she had not been given to him as a wife. She realized Shelah, the son that was young then, is now grown up. A considerable time has passed, and it dawned on her, Judah will never give him to me. Many years has gone by, the young boy is now a lad. Judah has no intention of fulfilling his promise. Unwilling to wait any longer, she disguises herself as a prostitute, waiting for Judah to pass by. Because Tamar knew something about Judah. He will fall. He went to Shipshare. He went to Las Vegas, and we know why. He wanted to make a one-night stand with a prostitute. If Judah will deceive me, well, I'll deceive him too. Verse 15. So when Judah saw her, he thought she was a whore. She was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, Here now, let me come into you. Let me go to bed with you. For he did not know that she was a daughter-in-law. And she said, Wait. How much did you pay? What will you give me that you may come into me? How much? I'm a whore. You need to pay me. Verse 17. He said, Therefore, I will send you a young goat from my flock. Just a promise, huh? She said, Moreover, will you give me a pledge until you send it? Hindi pwedeng boko-boko lang. Give me a collateral. He said, What pledge shall I give you? And she said, Your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and he went and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and departed and removed her veil and put on her widow's garment. True enough, what Tamar knew about his father-in-law was right. He will fall into the trap. And indeed, he fell into the trap. She was smooth talking into getting Judah to leave his signet cord, his staff, and his signet cord, his cord, and his staff. In today's parlance, it's like leaving his wallet with his IDs and passport and credit card. You know, a signet at that time was a roll of a roll, either of wood or clay, whatever, hard or stone, that is placed around the neck. And whenever they have to sign, they would have to roll that, and it will leave a mark. It's like the signet ring eventually. Remember the signet ring? The ring will be stamped, same as the signet here. But it is a cylindrical roll, wherein if I send you something, I will put my mark and you will know it came from me, Bobby Cordon. Now, the staff is a shepherd's staff. It's a sign of authority. On the top of the staff is my name, my emblem, that signifies that this staff is owned by Bobby Cordon. It will be So by getting the signet and the staff, you're able to identify the owner of those things. Tamar was not interested really on the collateral. What Tamar was interested was a proof of the person who impregnated her. She was just saying, give me a collateral. And when asked, what? Your identities. Your calling card, your passport, that's what he asked. To identify the person that impregnated her. Ironically, remember, they met where? In the entrance of Enaim. The word Enaim, the place, means the opening of the eyes. It is here that the eyes of Judah will be opened. Verse 20. When Joseph sent the young goat by his friend Adullamite to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. So after going to Las Vegas, he eventually came back to Canaan. And what? He kept his word. He kept his honor to deliver his obligation of sending the goat. Funny, no? Judah was willing to keep his word to a prostitute, but not keep his word to his daughter-in-law. She wanted really to get rid of the daughter-in-law because the daughter-in-law is a curse. 21. But when they went there for 20, right? He did not find the prostitute. Verse 21. He asked the man on her place, saying, "Where is the temple prostitute who was by the roads at Enaim?" But they said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." Funny. All of a sudden, the friend of Judah wanted to cover the sin and called it what? Where was the temple prostitute? When Judah went with a what? A harlot. Remember? The word that was used was harlot. It did not say that Judah went into a temple prostitute, but went into a harlot. Now, they're trying to cover the sins of Judah. Now, during that time, people would really go to the temple to go to bed with a temple prostitute in order that their sheets and their stocks and their produce will prosper. It's for fertility. So that their land will be more fertile and their lambs and livestock will be more fertile. It's just an excuse for them to sin. Really. Verse 22. So he returned to Judah and said, "I did not find her." And furthermore, the men of the place said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." What? There was no temple prostitute? Yes. I've asked around. Then Judah said, "Well then, let her keep them. Otherwise, we will become a laughingstock. After all, I have sent this goat, but you did not find her." Okay, you couldn't find her? Let's just keep quiet. Don't ever look for her. Lest people discovered that I slept with a harlot, with a prostitute. She can keep my credit card. She can keep my wallet. She can keep my calling card. I just say if somebody finds it, well, it was stolen. Lest I be caught with my sin and I become a laughingstock. 23. Then Judah said, oh no, that's the point. Let her keep them, otherwise we'll become a laughingstock. 24. Now it was about 3 months later that Judah was informed, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played a harlot, and behold, she is also with a child by harlotry." Then Judah said, Bring her out and let her be burned. 3 months has passed. That one night stand is over and done with. Everything is behind him now. All of a sudden, one day, one of the people said, your daughter-in-law is pregnant. With that knowledge, Judah was so enraged. If you think of it, it's a height of hypocrisy, right? Without a blinking of the eye, without even inquiring with Tamar, without even investigating, he took the hearsay of people and said, burn her, put her to death. Not realizing that if indeed that happens, his seed, his child, will be put to death. Judah is willing to sleep with a harlot, but condemns his daughter-in-law when he believes that she acted similarly. How easy for us to condemn other people, and we ourselves are guilty of the same sin. He leaped at the opportunity to get rid of this Tamar, this curse in our family. This is the opportunity that I've been waiting for to dispose of Tamar so that I can marry off now my youngest son to another girl. The dilemma will be solved. The family will survive. We can now continue with our lives. And she said, and Judah said, bring her out. What that means is bring her out to the gates. Remember, the gate is where everybody meet. Where the elders would said, bring her out to the gate and what? Burn her there. It's like, bring her out to Plaza Miranda and burn for Luneta and burn for all to see. He condemns her daughter-in-law for the very same sin that he commits. Verse 25. The people of Judah goes into the house of Tamar, gets her, and brings her out. It was while she was being brought out to the gates to be burned alive. She sent a word to his father-in-law saying, I am with a child by the man to whom these things belong. And she said, please examine and see whose signet ring, cord, and staff are these. The time has come for Tamar to execute her plan to expose Judah's hypocrisy. It's the same wording that Judah used in deceiving his father. Remember? Jacob was kind of blind and said, examine this, Dad. The bloodied coat of Joseph. And by examining, Joseph concluded that Joseph was dead. Now, the same wording was used. Examine this. I mean, wow, right? Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Sheila, and he did not have a relationship with her again. Can you imagine the shock of Judah? Sir, your daughter-in-law has this 3 things, the signet, the cord, and the staff. She said, please examine it because the owner of these articles is the father of my child. And Judah recognized. He could have denied. that that was not mine. But that's his name. He could have said na, no, well, that was stolen when I went to Las Vegas. He could have denied it. But he admitted to his mistake, and she said she is more righteous than I. In some rendering, she is righteous, not I. He was not callous anymore to his sin. Now Judah is confronted with his sins and realizes his sinfulness. He is now guilty. She has lied to Tamar, denied her rights, and is guilty of the very same sin that is punishable by death. In fact, he wanted to kill her. Tamar entered that situation out of desperation. Judah entered that situation simply because to satisfy his lustful desires. Now think for a moment if you were Judah. Remember when they were looking for the prostitute to pay and they said they couldn't find her? He said, quiet na lang. Let's not ever look for her. Let I be a laughingstock. Now, the whole town knows that Tamar is to be put to death because of idolatry. Now Judah says, stop the execution. People ask, why? The sin that he wanted to hide is now exposed. Why? Why Judah? Well, because I'm the father. What? Can you imagine the shame, the embarrassment that was put on Judah? He will now really be the laughing stock of their place. Halting the public execution. But sometimes that is what is required. God puts us in a position wherein we are to confront our sins and face, in some cases, embarrassments, hurtful feelings. Remember, sin has its consequence. It will bite you in the end. You know, we're in chapter 38, right? Next week, we're in chapter 39. Back to Joseph. 39 to 50. This chapter 38 of Judah spanned 20 to 23 years. Which means what? As we go into the life of Joseph next week, Joseph was in jail. Joseph was a slave. Joseph was tempted. While this was happening, guess what? This life of Judah was happening. So when Joseph resisted the innuendos of Potiphar's wife, Judah was sleeping with a prostitute. The 20 years this was happening, that was a time that Joseph was living in Egypt until they met in the end. And again, I say, if you look at the life of Judah, these 20 years of lying, of adulterous living, right? And look at the life of Joseph and his faithfulness, you would say that Joseph should be the seed, not Judah. Because Judah is extremely terrible. For 20 to 23 years, he turned back from his family. He was living a deceived life. But the good thing here is this. God can and does crack the hardest of hearts. You know, I realize there are more people deserving to be part of the seed, the line of the seed. More deserving. Even Esau seemed to me sometimes more deserving than Jacob. But why these people? So that we may realize the goodness and greatness and graciousness of God. That it is not about people, that they are good. It's because of God that He is good. So the Bible wants to show us that Judah, the chosen seed, was so sinful. Yet God chose him to encourage us, to give hope to us. I keep on asking, why is God showing all these flaws of all these people? To show us that God is dealing with real people like you and me. In the case of Judah, it took 20 to 20 years. 20 to 23 years. Imagine, he was a slave trader selling his brother. Despite the fact the brother was pleading, give me food, or else I'll die. He left a deaf ear. He turned his back from the promised land. He turned his back from his own family. He got a Canaanite wife, wherein he should not, forcefully, as some would say. He failed his father. He lied to his father. He deceived his father. He raised two evil kids. What kind of a dad is that? Raising two kids that's so bad that God wanted to put them to death. He was a fornicator. He was a hypocrite. Yet outstanding is the fact that he is a chosen seed. Not because he was faithful, but because God is faithful to his promise to Abraham. That's how faithful our God is. That even the worst of sinners has hope. Because of the grace of God. The Bible is all about the goodness and grace of God to sinful and fallen people like Judah, like you and me. You're adulterous? You have hope. You're a murderer? You have hope. David was a murderer. He had hope. Jacob I love, Esau I hate. Everything is by divine election. Now, if Judah was saved and he was saved, who gets the glory? God. How can a God love somebody as bad as Judah? How can God love somebody as bad as you and me? Amazing grace, how can it be? Verse 27, 28 and 29. It came about at the time that she gave birth, Tamar did, that behold, there were twins in her womb. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth that one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread at his hand, saying, this came out first. 29. But it came about that as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. Then he said, what a breach you have made for yourself. So he named him Perez. Interesting. It's a similar story of Jacob and Esau, right? Esau was the elder, but Jacob became the heir. Esau sold his birthright with a red stew, here with a scarlet. Again, everything is by divine election. Afterwards, his brother came out who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and he was named Zerah. So after Judah, the next seed was Perez. Now the next seed is born. You know what's so amazing to me? Tamar, Judah, is the grandparents of Jesus. What? Yes! He is the grandparents. Huh? That kind of, yung lolo ko ganyan? Yes. Amazing. Despite their sinful, your grandmother is a prostitute. Wow, what royal lineage that is, right? But the story of Judah and Tamar is a great encouragement for all of us who are sinners in need of a Savior. Because Judah reminds us that salvation is of the Lord. Not because of your good works, not because of what you have done, but because of what He has done. Clear. This is so clear to me in the Bible now. That the great, a lot of people, I was just telling this to my kids yesterday, we are not to be like David. We are not to be like Jacob or Judah. Right? We are just to be grateful to God that despite our sinfulness, God never gives up on His people. God will always keep His promises. And the redemptive history of God is not hinged on the faithfulness of His people, but in the faithfulness of God. Because if God relied on the faithfulness of His people, guess what? The plan will fail. They both remind us that God was at work bringing out the redemption and to preserve the family line that will bring forth Jesus our Savior. Do you know anyone who's like Judah? Who's been rebelling with God? Not for 1 year, not for 2 years, not for, in this case, 20 to 23 years. There is hope. Judah, Exhibit A. Because God will not let go of His children. We are not to give up on them. We are to pray for them. Who can separate us from the love of God? None. There's no sin that you can do that will separate you from the love of God. Second, are you Judah? Unwilling to give up your sin, stubbornly believing that you are right. What will it take for you, for your eyes to be open? You know the story of the sheep, right? If a sheep strays, what does the shepherd do? He pulls him back. If the sheep strays again, he gets a stick and hits it. Bang! Pulls him back. If the sheep strays again, what does the shepherd do? He breaks the leg. Bang! And carries him. Let's not wait for God to break our leg. Let's not wait for God to put us to shame, to expose our sin. The Bible says, sin will find you out. It's just a matter of time. All I can say with the story of Judah and Tamar is this: we have a God, a wonderful and faithful and gracious God who will never give up on His chosen people. Thus says the Lord. Amen.